Dan Campbell. Dan Campbelled all over himself on Sunday night in San Francisco. And listen, game itself was crazy. You don't need me to tell you, but San Francisco falls. It was astonishing to watch early. Detroit, listen, I've been a Detroit guy all along. I've always liked Dan Campbell, but I've liked all their draft picks. I liked watching Jamison Williams in college. I liked watching Jahmyr Gibbs in college. I liked even watching Sam Laporta for Iowa in college. So I've always had a soft spot for them. I thought they were legit as late or as early as week 1 when they went to KC and won. But to see them just go up and down the field, up and down the field, up and down the field, take complete control of that game, and they do, and pay attention here, kick the field goal before the half to go up 24-7. You're like, oh my God, the Lions are really about to go to the freaking Super Bowl. This is unbelievable. And then the second half starts, and you know what happened from there. Kick a field goal on the opening drive. And then the next drive, there's that weird tipped pass interference that falls in Brandon Ayuk's hands. A few plays later, you score a touchdown. All of a sudden, that 24-7 lead is now 24-17. And then you have the Jahmyr Gibbs fumble. You have the touchdown. And from there, all of a sudden, it is 27-24. The San Francisco 49ers have the lead. And so with it comes the seminal moment of the game. You know what it is. You know I got to talk about it. You know we have to discuss it. Detroit has the ball, trailing 27-24. About 7 minutes to go. They cross the 50-yard line. They get into field goal range. And on 4th down, 4th and 3, Dan Campbell has the option to kick the field goal or the option to go for it on 4th down. The field goal would tie the game, 7 minutes to go in San Francisco on the road. Obviously, a first down gives you a new set of downs, potentially a chance to potentially run out the clock, but really realistically, you still got to get into the end zone. Well, Dan Campbell decides to go for it on 4th down. The Lions do not convert. San Francisco goes down and scores a touchdown just a few minutes later. At that point, they're now up 34-24. Detroit, by the way, gets the ball back right into the red zone. And even then, Dan Campbell really kind of screwed up because he burned a timeout when he didn't have to. Detroit scores a touchdown. They cannot get the the onside kick. And they end up losing the NFC Championship game 34-31 after leading 24-7 at the half. So you knew all that. You didn't need Torres to tell you, but I wanted to give you a little bit of context. Context is going to be a key word here over the next few minutes. And so I do want to break down and I do want to discuss. Listen, sometimes a game is about a million different things going wrong. I think you can argue that for Baltimore. This game to me came down to one simple thing. Did Dan Campbell make the right decision to go for it on 4th down, 7 minutes to go, trailing by 3? And what I will tell you, I'm just going to give my opinion. You're allowed to disagree. But I believe that unless Dan Campbell either knew his kicker couldn't kick it because maybe he was injured or there was something going on, or he did not believe that his kicker could make that field goal, then it was 100% zero doubt the wrong decision. That's the only answer. That's the only explanation. There is no other explanation. And it's kind of all right. Now, the other side, and people will say this, they'll say, well, Torres, Dan Campbell has been aggressive all year long, and you can't get mad at him for going for it on 4th down in that situation. Well, actually, I can, and I'll tell you why it was wrong, again, assuming that he did not believe his kicker could make that kick. Why it was wrong is because what did I just tell you a minute ago? Dan Campbell had another situation where it was 4th and 3, and he could either kick a field goal, take the points, or he could go for it and try to get the touchdown. It came on the final play of the first half. The final play of the first half, Detroit was up 21-7 and had a chance to go for it before the half. Instead, Dan Campbell decides to kick the field goal, which, by the way, I have no problem with. I'm a believer in taking the points, barring the context. But that is where the entire argument of this is how Dan Campbell always coaches. He's aggressive. This is who he is. That's where the entire argument falls apart. Because if the argument is you're always aggressive, then you have to always be aggressive. You can't be selectively aggressive unless you acknowledge that context matters. And if context mattered in the first half, and it clearly did, right? Context clearly mattered in the first half, because in the first half, what did Dan Campbell decide? He said, you know what? I want to take the points because we may need them later, but beyond that, we want momentum going into halftime. We miss a field goal on the road. It gives the crowd life. It gives the opponent life. It deflates us. Let's take the points. And so before the half, context mattered. And so if context mattered in the first half, then context has to matter in the fourth quarter. And the context tells you it was a terrible decision, okay? And this, by the way, is my problem in general with analytics. And I think a lot of you have probably heard Torres do the analytics discussion. But at the same time, my problem with analytics is pretty straightforward. I like analytics. I actually think they're very important. I know on Twitter, sometimes I come off as a meathead and, old school, eye test, whatever. Analytics are important. But analytics, this is where people mix up analytics. Analytics are there to tell a part of the story. They are not the entire story. That is an important differentiator, because analytics, they tell part of the story. They are not the story. People that abide by analytics religiously want to make them the whole story. No, analytics are part of the story. What they do not factor in is context in the moment. By the way, I thought I was doing radio on Sunday with Kyle Rudolph, former NFL player, Minnesota Vikings, etc. I thought he brought up a great point. He said analytics are designed to always get you the most points possible, regardless of outcome. That sounds great, but that's not always what you need. You don't always need the points, right? Sometimes it's better, as an example, you're at the 50-yard line. You could go for it on fourth down. If you go for it on fourth down, it allows you to get the most possible points. But say you're up by 8, say you punt the ball, then that team has to go 99 yards the other way and score. So that's just an example. But analytics are a part of the story. They're designed to get you the most points possible, but they don't take context into consideration. And the context says that Dan Campbell should have kicked the field goal. Analytics don't give context. I know I just said that. So what was the context here, right? The analytics say that 4th and 3, you'll get it about 47% of the time. So if you do it over an extended period of time, it's basically a 50-50 proposition, okay? Well, first of all, those analytics are screwed up because you didn't go for it on fourth down earlier in the game on 4th and 3 when you could have kicked when you did kick the field goal. But beyond that, think about the context of that situation. This isn't week 3 in the third quarter against the Bears, okay? This is in San Francisco on the road to go to the Super Bowl. And if you here's the thing, and I know I'm rambling, but I'm really fired up. This is what matters. If you want to play the analytics card, that's fine. But what I keep going back to is the context part. The context part is pretty straightforward. Think about the best and worst case scenario in that situation. The best case scenario is what? You get a first down and you still have to go another 25 or so yards to get the go-ahead score. And even if you get the first down, it doesn't guarantee that you tie the game. It doesn't guarantee that you take the lead. All it guarantees is that you get a fresh set of downs, and you still, in theory, could have to kick the field goal, could have to score a touchdown to take the lead, and give the ball back to San Francisco one way or the other. And so to me, you kick the field goal because in that moment, you have the potential to tie the game. San Francisco gets the ball back. You have all 3 timeouts. So even if they score, you'll have plenty of time to again go the length of the field. There is simply no justification for it. And again, it's why the context is so important. You are on the road. 3 points ties the game. A first down does nothing other than restart the chains. It doesn't make sense. And this is what drives me crazy about analytics. It doesn't take into account home or road. It doesn't take into account crowd noise. It doesn't take into account weather. It doesn't take into account emotion. And it doesn't take into account, by the way, that your defense is gassed. It has been being run up and down the field on all game long. And if you don't, or really the second half, I should say. And if you don't get the first down, San Francisco is probably going to go score and go up 2 scores, excuse me. So I could go on and on, but the decision drove me crazy. And I'll be blunt, I don't think it was the right decision. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't feel bad for Detroit fans. It doesn't mean that I don't wish the result was different, or at least, I don't want to say that because that takes away from San Francisco, but I do feel bad for Detroit fans. I mean, you're in a situation, you were up 24-7 at the half. And then just everything goes wrong. Weird stuff. The tip pass, the fumble, the this, the that. You were this close to going to the Super Bowl. And I feel bad because, listen, it's easy to sit there and say, oh, well, you'll get back sometime. And they may. They're really young and really talented. Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, who else? Whatever. Aiden Hutchinson, Penei Sewell. Like, there's a lot of young, talented people on that roster. But Jared Goff is probably going to get a contract extension after this year. Now, next year, he'll still be on kind of a manageable salary, but at some point, you're not going to be able to keep these guys. Feel bad for the Lions. Congrats to the 49ers. We'll talk 49ers at some point over the next 2 weeks, but it is hard not to feel bad for San Francisco or feel bad for Detroit after that game.